Good day and welcome back to another crazy dose of EV and net zero insanity in MGUY EV news for Saturday the 22nd of February 2025. Be sure to follow me on the usual socials for more content, links in the description, and please make sure you're subscribed so you never miss out on any future videos. So this is the story that keeps on giving, a bit like Hertz, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the Moss Landing power plant, which is a huge battery energy storage system, caught fire in January and was extinguished. But with all these things, whenever you have lithium-ion batteries involved, they can spontaneously reignite days, weeks, months after the initial extinguishment of the fire. And this is exactly what's happened here. In California, fire ignites at Moss Landing power plant again. A new fire broke out at Moss Landing power plant Tuesday night when smouldering lithium-ion batteries reignited, officials said. Batteries burned inside the same building where a massive blaze broke out in January at Vistra's battery energy storage system facility, officials said. The new fire is smaller than January 16th's inferno. Oh, that's good then. The County of Monterey's Department of Emergency Management urged residents who live near the power plant to keep their windows and doors closed because of smoke. I wonder if the EPA will whitewash this again like they did the first time by saying there was absolutely no risk to human health, despite the fact that residents have now launched a class action against the power station for effects on their health. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But this is the trouble with lithium-ion batteries. When they've been burned, some cells can be completely burned out and, basically turn to dust. But others can be still holding a hell of a lot of energy, and all it takes is a short circuit or part of the separator to break down, and this could happen at any time in the future. It's completely unpredictable. So this is going to continue happening until, basically all the batteries are just burnt to nothing. So if you think EV or electric planes were a bad idea, how about hydrogen planes? Storing tanks of hydrogen at 2,000 bar or 2,000 atmospheres and having to deal with cryogenic storage when you're 35,000 feet up in the air. But that didn't stop Airbus from actually seriously contemplating building a hydrogen aeroplane. The government must have thrown them billions of dollars and say, here, try making a hydrogen aeroplane. It's about as ridiculous as a battery aeroplane. And they've just literally quit that game. Hydrogen planes were meant to deliver net zero. Those plans are being torn up. The aviation industry's scramble to decarbonise has run into an indomitable foe, the law of physics. Yes, of course, because reality always beats fantasy. The push to develop hydrogen-powered planes was once a key part of the aviation industry's bid to eliminate carbon emissions. A quick question, where do you get the hydrogen from? You can't just go to your local shop and buy hydrogen. It has to be made. It has to be created by electrolyzing water, effectively splitting water into hydrogen and oxygen, and that needs energy. And where do you get that energy from? You're back where you started again, because hydrogen isn't an energy source in itself. It's just a carrier of energy that's been used somewhere else. So it's not going to eliminate carbon emissions. But in the last few weeks, it has fallen suddenly and dramatically out of favour. First, European airlines and manufacturers drastically downgraded their target for the contribution of hydrogen to their goal of reaching net zero by 2050. Then Airbus, the world's biggest plane maker, put the industry's most advanced program for developing a hydrogen-powered passenger aircraft on hold because it's impossible and not worth doing. Boeing, always a comparative skeptic, has meanwhile confirmed that it sees little or no role for hydrogen in decarbonising its own jets for decades at least. The decline in hydrogen's fortunes represent a potential setback for the UK, where British companies and the government having invested hundreds of millions of pounds in the technology. This is the kind of junior school science project technology that we get when there's money is no object. People seriously think that you can make a hydrogen aircraft. It's beyond belief. This is another gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? A bit like the Moss Landing power plant. Hertz. Yes, it's a complete train wreck for Hertz, having gambled on EVs for their fleet, not realizing that they are a terrible, terrible idea for rental cars. I mean, there's a whole list of reasons why they're bad. You know, they have crazy acceleration, which makes accidents more likely. When accidents do happen, they cost more to repair. They cost more to insure. They have the hassle of charging, and nobody wants them. But that didn't stop them, again, taking leave of their senses and buying or ordering hundreds of thousands of EVs, despite the fact that none of their customers actually wants them. And here's a bit of a sum up of what's happened over the past couple of years. Rental company Hertz lost billions on its Tesla gamble. Electric vehicles offer some great benefits over combustion-powered cars and trucks. Yeah, right, okay. Greatly reduced maintenance, zero tailpipe emissions, instant off-the-line torque, yeah, yada, yada, yada. Back in late 2021, the massive car rental company made some waves, capitalizing on the red-hot popularity of Tesla electric vehicles at the time. The firm announced that by the end of 2022, it planned to place an initial order for 100,000 Muskmobiles, a deal worth some $4.2 billion. In theory, this would give customers access to the latest and greatest technology, as well as the ability to drive something a little greener than your typical rental car. Well, depending on where the electricity is generated, of course. Hertz even enlisted entrepreneur and 7-time Super Bowl winner Tom Brady to help spread the word. At the time, the blah, blah, blah. Despite the popularity of Teslas, a big push to go green and a solid celebrity endorsement, Hertz's high hopes were dashed. The company's big investment in Tesla vehicles ended up leading to some staggering financial losses. Unfortunately, this gamble didn't end up paying off for Hertz. The company had a GAAP net loss of $2.9 billion in 2024, or $9.34 per diluted share. Reportedly, this financial bloodbath is because Hertz has completed selling off some 30,000 electric vehicles from its fleet, an action that was announced back in 2023. And this is the other reason that they're talking about that I forgot to mention earlier, but here we go. The rapid depreciation of Tesla vehicles is largely responsible for these losses because they can't recoup the cost. Once they've finished using with them for their business, they want to sell them off and make a decent chunk of money, but they're just worth nothing. According to a report from TheStreet.com, these cars, which were mostly Model 3 sedans, accelerated past the point where Hertz saw them as virtually worthless, much faster than they anticipated. Also, customers were leery of renting them in the first place, likely because of unfamiliarity and America's questionable public charging network. So all of these articles are linked in the description. Go and read the whole thing for the full story, of course. But yes, Hertz, this is, again, it's fantasy over reality, where you think, oh, we're going to go green, we're going to buy a bunch of Teslas without thinking it through. And then, how many billions have lost? 2.9 billion losses? God. But, that's what net zero and, ESG does for corporate boards, because they just lose sight of any kind of common sense. This is very interesting. I've seen recently articles in the pro-EV press about how, 95% of people, who've got an EV will never buy an ICE car, or, huge proportions of countries' populations are going to buy EVs. And I always took it with a grain of salt, but Deloitte have actually done a proper study, 30,000 inquiries, I think, 30,000 data points, and they've come up with this Global Automotive Consumer Study, tracking consumer trends in the automotive industry. And we'll just skip through to this one here, which is the key one. All battery electric vehicle inertia remains muted in most markets as interest in internal combustion engine, ICE and hybrid vehicles ticks up. And if we go to the fancy graphic, there we go, we can see that most countries, if you exclude China and Germany, most countries are under 10%, 11% of people who actually want to buy a BEV for their next car. This is interesting. Go and read the whole thing in the description, because there's a lot of information in this report. But you can see US 5% are interested in buying a battery electric car. 8% in India, 11% Southeast Asia, 14% in Germany, only 8% in the UK, despite all their mandates and their tax benefits and subsidies and all the rest of it. 3% in Japan. Amazing. It's only China which is driving the EV market globally. And, you know, I've said it before, I'll say it again, nobody wants EVs. Very noisy V8 going past there. And here in Canada, because they've withdrawn all the carrots and sticks, 70% drop in sales for Teslas due to price hikes and loss of rebates. Tesla saw a big drop in sales across Canada in January, but it's not because of a wave of anti-Elon Musk sentiment. Instead, the drop is actually to do with the loss of rebates at both the federal and provincial levels and recent price hikes. As a result, it wasn't just Tesla that saw its sales drop, with other automakers also seeing large double-digit declines. But that's extraordinary. While official numbers have not yet been released, preliminary sales data from S&P Global and shared with the Toronto Star show that Tesla sales in Canada dropped by 70% from December 2024 to January 2025, mirroring a drop of 79% for the broader electric vehicle EV and plug-in hybrid sales. So yeah, Tesla is in deep strife. Now, this is an interesting article from California because it actually makes the point that the difference in cost between running an EV and running a regular car is actually diminishing. And, well, why would that be? Because electricity is becoming so expensive that the difference in filling up an EV compared to filling up a combustion car is getting less and less. The Vanishing Electric Vehicle Advantage, this article is titled. Let's just skip through. But backwards state policies and corporate negligence are driving up the cost of electricity as well. Consequently, the California Air Resources Board, CARB, estimated electricity costs of 18 cents per kilowatt hour not only understates California's statewide average for cost per kilowatt hour by around 28%, but the estimate grossly understates peak pricing at PG&E, one of the Pacific Gas and Electric, the largest power company in the state. Using CARB's calculations, consumers charging their cars at peak pricing of 49 cents per kilowatt hour would spend $19 to recharge their EVs. The point is that it's not inconceivable for a charge to soon be equal to or to exceed the cost of refueling with gasoline, though the cost of gasoline is rapidly rising as well. It's a race to the top, and while we won't know who will win, we know for sure it'll be California drivers who lose. Well, this is what happens when you try and force everyone to drive electric cars at exactly the same time that you take away any reliable form of electricity generation. You couldn't make this up, that the two things are happening at the same time. You know, drive more electric cars, electrify everything, but we're going to rely on windmills and solar panels instead of like proper base load generation. And guess what? The price goes up. Despite what Chris Bowen says, despite what Ed Miliband says, renewable energy is more expensive. They just fudge the figures to make it seem like it's cheaper. Unbelievable. Good news from Audi and Volkswagen. They're sticking with gas engines. The German duo reportedly intends to extend the life cycle of current cars with combustion engines in Europe. Excellent news. Volkswagen saw its electric car sales decrease by 2.7% in 2024 when Audi fell even harder, with EV deliveries declining by 7.8%. Demand for the VW Group zero-emission models decreased by 3.4%, proving that the transition to an all-electric lineup will be bumpy and it will take way longer than these car companies originally thought. A new report indicates the two brands are looking to invest more money in facelifts of current ICE models. Doing so would prolong the life cycle of cars with combustion engines. I mean, I've talked about this several times on various occasions on this channel, but you cannot force through a transition of this magnitude in a period of 5 or 10 years. There is going to be a long period where electric cars and internal combustion engine cars will be side by side. They will run side by side for many, many decades. There will still be combustion cars, I would say, even in 2100. There will still be combustion cars on the road because you cannot get rid of them that quickly. And this is what the automakers are realizing, that there will still be a market despite all these nonsense mandates that Europe and the UK and places like Australia are trying to force through. It's just not going to happen. And so there's going to continue to be a market for combustion cars, and wisely, companies like VW and Audi are realizing that, you know, keep building what people want to buy, and they'll make profit. And finally, this is ridiculous. This is the ABC, which is our national broadcaster here, and they've gone over the top with this story. Like, the graphics on this story are just insane, because this particular ferry is being built in Hobart in Tasmania. The diesel ferry could be among the last of its kind rolling out of the dry docks of Hobart. A new ambitious venture is taking shape. Look at the graphics. Wonder how much that cost. This is no ordinary ferry. Weighing in at 2,000 tons and spanning 130 metres, it can host 2,100 passengers and 225 cars. And its beating heart, it's not beating at all because it's an electric motor, will be a giant system of batteries. Yay! As the world moves away from fossil fuels, yes, in the ABC's fever dream, this Tasmanian shipbuilder is betting that electric ferries are the future. Oh my God. It's the first project of that scale anywhere in the world, but they believe it's just the beginning. It's probably all bankrolled by taxpayer money. Building the world's largest electric ferry. Over the centuries, ferries have evolved from using paddles to steam engines to burning diesel and gas. Can the humble ferry go all electric? Hint, no it can't. Hull 096, as it's currently known, is being built by Incat in Hobart, Tasmania, a long way from its final destination in South America. It will eventually carry passengers across the Rio de la Plata between Argentina's capital Buenos Aires and Uruguay. Now this is the key point of this whole story. The journey across the river is about 30 nautical miles. That's just 55 kilometers and will take just over an hour. That's going to require some serious batteries that are able to keep Hull 096 running for 90 minutes. Super fast chargers will be installed on both sides of the river, with a full recharge taking 60 to 90 minutes. That means for every 90 minutes it's in service, it has to be out of service for another 90 minutes. Just think about that for a minute. And it says proudly, each year the ferry will save 37,545, very specific, tons of carbon dioxide. That's the equivalent of taking around 8,750 petrol cars off the road. Assuming, of course, that all the electricity is generated from renewable sources, which I can bet you they won't be. But this is the kind of stuff we, our taxpayer dollars, pay the ABC to spruik this kind of story with all those fancy flashy graphics. Oh dear me. Anyway, that's about it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one. Bye for now.